We're going to turn this over to Greg and just let him talk about everything that these people have put together.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, I want to say thank you to Jim Wolfrey and the group here at Camarillo Springs for letting us use this room free, no charge. Thanks a lot. Typically what happens in meetings like this is we try to get out so much information about so many different topics that it all becomes kind of overwhelming. So we thought we'd take a step back and compartmentalize it a little bit. So today we're going to just talk about golf and how the golf course may be reconfigured, redesigned, reimagined, and whether or not it might be sustainable, and also the process under which this all might happen, because we know it can't happen unless we have some additional investment money. So what we've done is we've gathered a group of specialists here. We're going to have a panel discussion, and Gary Lewis will moderate, and we'll hopefully give you guys an honest outlook about what's going to happen in the next year or so. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary Lewis. You're up, baby.
Can you hear me without this?
No.
Okay, I will use this. I'll be happy to. Will that work? Yeah. All this high tech stuff. All right. Need one of my grandkids to show me how to use it. How's that? Okay, good afternoon and thank you for being here. My name is Gary Lewis. I've been involved here for about 2 years. I got involved with the advisory board about 2 years ago. I've said this before, but when my wife read in the Acorn that Camarillo Springs was fixing to close or might close, and I had known New Urban West folks for years and years, so I called up Adam Browning and offered my services and to see if I could help save golf at Camarillo Springs. The biggest reason for my interest is I actually managed this golf course way back in the early 70s. Spent a lot of time here, had a lot of good times here. There was a time here when this golf course was in impeccable condition, did a whole lot of business. The clubhouse was jam-packed full. The food was good. They actually even had entertainment there from time to time. So we got involved. I met the advisory board, and I agreed to help. Let me back up. I've been in the golf business 50 years. I'm retired, semi-retired, but in that course of time, I've managed golf courses. I've been a regional manager. We've bought golf courses. We've sold golf courses. We've renovated golf courses. We've built golf courses. We've participated in the construction of Sherwood Country Club, Wood Ranch Country Club, built probably 55 courses around the country. So, and when I say built it, it's easier to say than we were the business managers. We wrote the budgets, we helped with the marketing, we found the financing, we hired the architects, we hired the contractors, and we generally facilitated the projects. But my agreement was if we did this, and if I got involved, I would want to bring other people to the table that were qualified in their own areas, because this couldn't just be a Gary Lewis project, and it's not a Gary Lewis project. We were able to bring Damian Pascuzzo, who is a world-class golf course architect, designed golf courses all over the world, member of the American Society of Golf Course Architects, past president of the society. Let me get my notes here. He, along with his design partner, Steve Pate, have done a magnificent job dealing with the constraints and restraints of the property. Gene Krikorian is one of the better known golf economists. He does feasibility studies, operational studies. He's worked in this business for, I won't say how long, a long time.
40 years,
but he's the gentleman that wrote the infamous study that everyone keeps referring to that was done for the city of Ventura. and he's helping us with our studies here. We have said all along that the golf course is in really, really, really bad condition. And it really doesn't take an operations expert to say that. But I said that 2 years ago, and no one really paid attention. Rich Wagner came along. Rich Wagner will be here in a few minutes. By the way, he's part of the Golf Advisory Committee too, a co-chairman along with Greg Sayer. Rich is more than qualified. He built Sterling Hills Country Club. He was with us at Sherwood Country Club. He was the superintendent at North Ranch, Oakmont, Saticoy Country Club, just impeccably qualified. He said it. Bobby Heath, the company that manages the golf course now, said it. No one paid attention to it. We even brought in an expert that used to work for the PGA Tour, the USGA, to do, to look at the infrastructure here. He said it, and no one paid attention. I can tell you today we found out there's a significant problem with the pump system. Okay? There could be a failure. And if it's what we think it is, it will require a significant investment that I don't know where that money's going to come from. And that's what drives the pump station to water the golf course. Now, it's nice now because God's watering the golf course. But when you have to go to the irrigation system and the pumps don't work, you can't get water on the golf course. So stay tuned. We'll keep you apprised of that. Give me a second. Gene, if you could stand up, please. What we're going to try to do is to just focus some questions at some of these folks, and at the end you may have some questions of your own. But what we've tried to do in this fact versus fiction scenario is to pick some of the questions that might be pertinent. And what I'd try to do is I'm going to ask these folks as to what their thoughts are, comments are, and they'll give you some ideas or answers. You have a sheet there, I think, that says if there's some things you may not want to raise your hand and ask a question in a public setting or a corporate setting, might be easier for you. Write them down, get it to us. I promise you we'll respond to you. Okay? Are you ready, bud?
Good.
You can sit down. It's okay. I just wanted you to.
Yeah, make them simple, okay?
Oh, I'm doing my best. All right. Okay. Spell cat. C and T is. I'll give you. No. All right. In your opinion, and you deal with this every day, what's the current state of the golf marketplace, both locally and nationally?
Well, we could spend the whole day talking about that, but in brief, the golf market was very strong up through about 2002. There was a real pent-up demand in the 1990s. A lot of golf courses were built. A lot were built in Ventura County. And so everything was going pretty smoothly through 2002. Then we had a number of factors sort of came into play. First of all, the demand for golf over the last 15 years has declined pretty substantially. The number of golfers is down, 15 or 20%. Rounds of play are down 15%. There have been a lot of golf courses closed. Very few golf courses have opened over that period of time. And it's become a very challenging market. And in particular, in the Ventura County market in particular is somewhat overbuilt at this point, has been for a while. Golf courses here are doing marginally well, but certainly much less, operated much less efficiently and effectively as they were years ago. There's a couple of real challenges facing the golf industry. One is irrigation water. Water costs have just skyrocketed. You're seeing golf courses in particularly San Diego County, which are closing at a regular pace. The cost of water for some of these courses is $600,000, $700,000 a year. That's one major challenge Here we're blessed to some degree by groundwater. I don't know whether that's sufficient and the quality is sufficient, but that certainly is a major asset that Camarillo Springs has. The other major factor that the industry is facing is the California minimum wage. As you probably know, most golf course employees are employed at or slightly above the minimum wage. And the minimum wage in California is scheduled to go from $10 per hour in 2016 to $15 an hour in 2022. So a 50% increase in labor costs, which is having a real impact on the profitability of golf courses. Those are probably the major challenges going forward. Golf courses, again, can operate successfully. They just can't generate sufficient income to pay for the cost of a new golf course. So, the Ventura courses generate $400,000 to $500,000 a year in net operating income before debt service. That's enough to keep them operating, but it's not enough to pay for development of a golf course or replacement of the golf course. Gary?
Thank you. Well, and we know this because we've discussed it, but you've analyzed the current condition of the existing golf course here at Camarillo Springs. Can you describe what you found?
Well, I guess there's good things and bad things. And the good thing is it's a beautiful site, particularly the back site where there's no development at all. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of property in Southern California. It really is. So there's a lot of potential and opportunity, I think, on the one hand. On the other hand, the golf course condition and really the infrastructure, which is the most important part, is really at the end of its useful life. The irrigation system, the very expensive component, is pretty much fully utilized and without much salvage value. The clubhouse has no salvage value. There just isn't much salvage value in the overall facility. So you're looking at having to replace virtually everything at this point in time, and that's what these plans are based on.
Why can't the existing operation just continue if there was just some more money? And wouldn't a new operator just take it over if we don't move forward with the current plan?
Well, the economics just aren't there. Our projections are that we looked at various scenarios or alternatives, different types of golf courses that might go on this property. And the net operating income that's generated sort of ranges from $250,000 to maybe $400,000, $500,000 a year under certain circumstances and assumptions and factors. Well, that justifies about $4 or $5 million in capital expenditure, which is good. I mean, it can support $4 to $5 million. Unfortunately, the cost of these various scenarios is going to be $10 to $12 million. So the golf course itself can support about half of the cost of development. So we have to find the other half from someplace else. Would an operator come in from the outside and put that much money into it? No. It's never. You can never say never, but it's not likely, in fact, very unlikely that you'll find anyone from the outside that would be willing to inject, the $10 to $12 million that's needed for this golf course, given the economics.
Well, and that's really true too. When you start to see infrastructure in this state of
disrepair.
Thank you. I wanted to say decline and something else and didn't come out. It becomes almost like a domino effect. One thing will fail, then before you know it, something else is going to fail. And if you just drive around and you see all the leaks, and I was talking to Dan Warren today about how he even gets his heads, irrigation heads, he has to go buy refurbished heads. They don't even make those heads anymore. And the way that I will tell you, and we introduced him at a golf committee meeting one night, and they were kind enough to give him a hand. The fact that he's just kept this golf course open and is able to mow the grass, he needs a gold star. I mean, I'm so impressed, and what he does with bubble gum and baling wire, it would blow you away. And if you hear anything differently, it's just not the truth. That's just all there is to it. Okay, you've also analyzed the proposed plan and its various shapes and configurations and whatnot. What do you think of what you've found?
Well, again, we looked at a series of alternatives. And let's be really clear. If we had sufficient land area and we had the capital, we would an 18-hole regulation length golf course would probably be the best solution. We don't have the land area to provide for proper hydrology requirements that are needed, and safety buffers that today's modern standards require for golf course design. We don't have enough land. So we looked at alternative developments, and I didn't come up with a concept, but we looked at a 9-hole golf course, regulation length. We looked at an 18-hole executive golf course, which would be pretty short, a little bit shorter than Westlake. And then we looked at a new concept, which is a 12-hole regulation length golf course designed, and Damien can describe this better than I can, but with various loops which allow the golfer to play 3 holes, 6 holes, 9 holes, 12 holes, or 18 holes. So there aren't very many of these in the country. It's a concept that's just gaining a lot of momentum at this point. There are probably 20 or 25 in the country that have been built. They have been moderately successful, if not, and some have been very successful. They produce not as much net income as an 18-hole regulation length course would, but not a whole lot less than that either. And in this market, I've been involved with this market for a long period of time. I've worked at Santa Barbara and their golf course for a couple of years ago, for Ventura City, also at River Ridge and Oxnard. So I know this market very well, and we're pretty enthusiastic, and there's been a lot of embracement of this new concept by Jack Nicklaus, among many, many others who believe that the concept fits with current trends in the golf industry of wanting sometimes a shorter golf experience, which this would provide, as well as a regulation of experience for those golfers who would want to play 18 holes. So we think this maybe is a good compromise in the market and something that fits on the site, and something which we think can be economically successful in terms of paying for its operating expenses and being viable if it can get the development funding that it needs.
That's good. Thank you, Gene.
Can I ask a question?
Surely.
So reading here, you say there's 1 in 9 people who like to play golf in the U.S., right? Oh, you want to use that?
Well, so everybody can hear you.
People hear me then.
Yo. So you're saying there's 1 in 9 people that play golf in the U.S., right?
Well, actually, the participation rate in golf for people who play at least once a year is, I think it's down to about 7.9 or 8%.
Okay.
But
So
not too far off.
So by going to a 12-hole course, you're kind of designing it more, like you said, to people who want to play quicker, play less. So you're kind of cultivating towards the 55 and over community. And so out of that 1 in 9 or whatever stat you just said,
1 in 12.
how many are 55 and over that you're going to be able to garner in Ventura County to come here and play golf and make this a viable, get enough people here to come make this viable. And like I said, if that doesn't work, then we're sitting on a course that, you know, is now not making money or enough money to be viable. Then what happens?
Do we hear me?
So, I mean, it's a great question. First of all, yeah, this type of course tends to appeal to senior golfers, a little bit more, women.
Still the one in the 9 hole, right, women?
Yeah, but the experience at we looked at, I don't know, 10 or 12 hole courses across the country. And the experience there has been, yeah, those are important segments, but they also have been able to attract regular golfers who just don't want to play 18 holes. They want to play.
As long as it's a good golf course.
Yeah, I mean, the golf, yeah, I mean, we're assuming this is going to be, and I've seen the design, this is going to be a really quality golf course. So, yeah, there's no guarantee. We've projected fewer rounds here than would be achieved at an 18-hole regulation length course. I think we've projected up to around close to 50,000 rounds a year. The Ventura courses do 60,000 rounds a year. River Ridge does with 36 holes does 90,000 rounds a year. We think priced to provide value. We're pretty confident we'll get enough play to more than break even on an operating basis. And I think that's.
And to add this, that two of the largest market segments in golf today are the millennials and us.
Right.
And the biggest reason that those two market groups don't play more golf, takes too long, costs too much money. So you have an opportunity here, and fortuitously, and Damien would like to take credit for this. You can literally play 3 holes, you can play 6 holes, you can play 9 holes, you can play 12 holes, you can play 18 holes. What's your poison? Pick your poison. And the beauty of it is, this is a place on your way home from work, you can play 6 holes, you can play 9 holes, you can play 3 holes. Mm-hmm. And I really think it's really interesting, and I don't know this, but I've had several people that are really high up in the golf business call me and say things like, this is going to come down to how you market it. Love the concept. We think it's right for this area. The visibility of this site is, if you can show me a better site for a public golf course anywhere, you can bust me. I mean, I don't know what the traffic count on 101 is, but it's got to be more than 5 or 6 cars a day. So if this is in good condition, and if it's, here comes the star, thank you, Lord. Excuse me. If this is a good golf course, if this is in good condition, if it's maintained correctly, and more importantly, if you have a staff that takes care of the needs of the folks to where it's the place you want to be, I can promise you as an operator, I like the chances of the place. Because if you treat people right, you give them value, at the end of the day, you'll say, well, how was the day? They'll say, good, it was great. How many holes you play? They won't say 9, they won't say 2, they won't say 7. They'll say, I played them all. Trust me.
I want to say I'm not against this. I want it to be successful. I do. So I don't mean to come in here and ask some question like, this is going to work. Obviously, you're going to have to pull golfers from some of the other courses to come play here instead.
And we'll have to do the right thing with the folks that live here. They'll have to be, resident rates, and it'll have to be. I get asked that question all the time. It's really interesting, though, and I don't want to get off on this tangent, but this is a really good. No, this is an important question. I get asked that question even when we're doing 18-hole courses in good markets and 18-hole private clubs in good markets. Well, what if it fails? Well, then shame on you for not coming out and supporting it. I mean, help us out here. If it's a good, and I'm not putting it on you, but if we can't design, I hope you will, many times. But what the challenge to us is to take this piece of ground, which, trust me, was not ideal and not in the best configuration, and come up with the best golf so we could give some presentation in some form that would attract the biggest segment of the market. And I'll be honest, I've operated a bunch of these around the country. I like our chances.
There's
sir.
Let me say one quick thing. There are 3 sort of drivers here too. One is the golf course, which we talked about. The other is the practice facility, which has the potential to be, probably the highest quality facility in Ventura County. And Westlake's facility, which is, it's okay, they have a little different demographics. That thing is a producer. And so we hope that this driving range here and the practice facility is going to be a major component. And then the third component would be the clubhouse, which generally isn't a big, you need a clubhouse one way or the other. I think that what's being planned or proposed here really has a chance to be a contributor and provide not only services for the golfer, but also for the non-golfing community. So we're excited about that.
That's good, sir.
Yeah, if I might add.
I'll get you. No, please go ahead.
Okay, no, I talk pretty loud, so if I might add something, I live on the 7th hole on the tee, and over the course of the last year, as this was developing and we were talking about changes in the golf course, what we're going to do, I've spoken to many, many millennials, as we spoke about earlier, that come through, and I asked that question: how would you feel about, a 9-hole or a 12-hole? And I got to be honest with you, most of them say they don't care. They would love that because they don't have, what you mentioned earlier, the time to play the full 18.
Yeah.
And so that's a positive note. And let's look at the growth of Camarillo. It's nonstop, and it's all youth.
Yeah.
So
And they come by it every day.
we're going to have a nice blend of seniors versus millennials.
You live on this fairway here?
Right there on the
And I'll-
top of the hill there.
Damien will bring this up.
Okay.
But one of the other things we were able to do, and we've highlighted before, is we reverse the flow of play. So all the slices go to the interior versus the exterior.
Right.
Chances are, if you tried to build this golf course today, you couldn't have built these homes in these fairways in this close proximity to the fairways. You have to have more of a setback, but that's why they're all gunnery targets now. So the way we did it, bad choice of word. But we reversed it to where most of those slices will go to the inside, and a lot of those the chain link fences will come down. That'll be a good thing. That'll be a good thing. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask if you could describe what you mean by a loop golf course, and how does that work when you have people who have signed up for tee times?
Well, a loop golf course, and Gene, you can speak up, and Damien, you can speak up. Usually, if there's a 9-hole loop where it starts at the clubhouse and comes back to the clubhouse. The 10th hole starts at the clubhouse and comes back to the clubhouse. Yes. So it's a 9-hole loop and then a finishing 9-hole loop, right? So it really doesn't affect your tee times as far as starting and stopping.
And how about other people that are waiting for other tee times?
Depending upon how you're structuring it or how your tee times are set that day, and many times they'll, for example, to take advantage of a party at the end, you're trying to do a shotgun start or something like that, and you don't have enough people to take the entire golf course. They can stagger some of the holes and have people start to where they all finish, but then you can still have tee times from the first hole. So that's just an operational thing. Oh, absolutely. But looping usually means a 9-hole loop, 1 through 9, and then 10 through 18. The 12-hole golf course they did in Yucca Valley, Kevin, in Yucca Valley, 12-hole golf course, is on 2 6-hole loops. And Kerry Bickler was able to do that on the, and it's working out pretty well for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir.
Do you need here?
Thank you. We all love living here, but everything comes back to money. And so I had a question for Gene. Gene, are you the author of the Ventura Golf Course study?
I'm the author of one study for the city, yes.
I don't know whether there was more than one study, but some people have been touting the study of Ventura Golf, saying that they make $1.6 million a year, so therefore 18-hole golf courses in Ventura County should be profitable and successful. How would you contrast and compare what you see in Ventura? You commented earlier they had $400,000 before debt service, and I presume because it's owned by the city, there isn't any debt service. So that's one thing that would be different. The other thing that's described as being different here is free water, and yet it's pretty costly to access the free water. So how would you, if that's successful, is that overstated, the 1.6 million? And then how would you contrast that to what we have here?
Well, let me talk about Ventura first. The 1.6 million, I've heard that number sort of flashed around. It's not true. There are a number, there's revenues and there's some expenses on the golf course that come down, and they show as much as $1.5 million. But below that, there are a number of expenses, such as management fee, utility costs, the cost of leasing golf carts, the cost of replacing maintenance equipment. And when you take all of those things into account, the golf courses jointly make about $1 million a year, maybe a little bit less. So they're not, they're not able to fund debt service. That's one reason we were retained, is to analyze what they could do to try to improve the operation. So, we project here that we're going to do not quite as well as those golf courses are going to do, but that we are going to cover our operating expenses and produce $350,000 a year in addition to that. So as long as the cost of the development is funded and we don't have debt service, we project that the golf course will operate with a reasonable buffer, and that's good.
But the idea here is that a golf developer will invest X millions of dollars that would have to be serviced from operations, and the housing developer would contribute X millions of dollars, which would not have to be serviced. So the golfer development company, their debt service would be part of this bottom line margin that you're talking about.
That's exactly right. I mean, the reality is that there's someone willing. I'm involved with golf. I'm not involved with the residential or anything like that. But to the extent that there's a source of funding that's available through this other mechanism, allows the golf course to be rebuilt. And in the absence of that, personally, I don't see a source of funding for the golf course at all.
That good?
So is there a source of funding?
Is there a source? The developer is going to contribute a significant amount toward the budget of rebuilding the golf course. Yes.
What happens after that?
I don't know what that means.
Like, who takes over the management?
It would be so much easier to take it to a known golf course operator, developer, because his debt would make sense and he could make money on what he would have to invest in the property.
Okay.
So they're making it significantly easier for that developer to come in. This question came up today, who's going to operate the golf course? How do we know that they know what they're doing and all that kind of stuff? The truth of the matter is it will be someone, either a management company, they will either have someone that comes in and buys it with their help, or there will be a professional, known, proven, experienced management company that will run the operations.
As a contract.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're up. Damian Pascuso. Thank you, Gene, so much. I've worked with Gene. I've worked with Gene a lot over the years, and the thing that I like about him, sometimes depending on what side of the fence I'm on, but the thing I like about him is his thoroughness. I mean, he dots I's and cross T's, and he really brings you the facts, and they're provable facts, and he's a delight to work with. And once again, he's done his job here. Damian Pascuso, good friend. Pascuso Pate Golf Course Design. His better half's not here tonight, but that's okay. Wonder if you can answer a few questions.
Yeah, sure. What do you need?
Okay. The vision for the new course here, how'd that all come about?
Well, I'll try to keep the story kind of short. A number of years ago, I was speaking at a Urban Land Institute conference. Urban Land Institute's a group of developers from nationwide, and it was specifically about golf course and residential development. And there was a panel of women during part of the conference, and they were talking about how important women are to the buying process in joining a club or a second home community. And to make a very long story short, what I learned from them is that the salespeople were telling us that women were coming into the sales office and saying, we like the golf course, but 18 holes is too much for us. Do you have an alternative? 9's not quite enough. 18's too much. Does 13 come back to the clubhouse, or 12? And it kind of got the wheel spinning a little bit. And so the more I thought about it over the years, I don't know if anybody's been up to play Monarch Dunes up in Napomo, but that's a course Steve and I did. And the second course there was going to be a 9-hole executive golf course, 2 par 4s, 7 par 3s. And we pitched the idea of a 12-hole par 3 golf course. And fortunately, we had a forward-thinking owner at the time, and he jumped on board, and it's been remarkably successful. It's been very well received. I thought maybe the best part of it was that the homes that sold on the challenge course, as we called it, sold for the same premium as the homes on the 18-hole regulation golf course. So people clearly didn't see a distinction between living on one golf course or the other. So we thought that was pretty neat. We must have done something right, because 3 years later, Jack Nicklaus opened up a 12-hole par 3 golf course at Red Ledges in Utah. So we felt a little bit honored and vindicated with it. So that was kind of the start of it. But the more we kept hearing about how things have changed, golf has undergone amazing changes in the last 15 or 20 years. The more we started hearing about how people's lifestyles were changing and how golf had to play a different role for them, this idea of a 12-hole regulation golf course was kind of, floating at the top of our heads there. And then we met Gary, and he introduced us to this project, and as soon as he said, what do you think of a 12-hole golf course, Steve and I did the happy dance, because we found a kindred spirit. And so we think it's really the right reaction. It's the right result. We could easily do a 9-hole regulation golf course, and we would be just like all the other 9-hole regulation golf courses. 12 holes, especially with the configuration, as probably you guys know, Ted Robinson was your original designer. Great man, very prolific golf course architect. But we're right here in the community clubhouse now. There's a 3-hole loop out behind us. We call that the east area. There's a 3-hole loop where you can start and finish. Here's the clubhouse, so that's right out here. And then if you go over the ridge, there's 6 holes back here. So unlike a lot of golf courses that maybe you've played or seen, where the holes are all nose to tail, right? They're laid out like a big chain link in a 9-hole loop, and you got houses on both sides. We don't have that here. If we had that kind of configuration, we wouldn't be talking about 12 holes, because we wouldn't have the elbow room to do it. So this is really a very, I think, a fortuitous meeting of opportunity and thought, because the golf course site lends itself to this concept so beautifully. And then again, with today's lifestyles, I think that it's interesting what I'm seeing in my work. I'm working at a number of private clubs where we have introduced forward tees. And I mean forward tees, like where the total yardage is 3,700 yards from those tees, and then 4,400 yards. And we've done it, it's been in place now for over a year, and the response has been phenomenal. And the older players, I'm talking like in the 80s, the guys that are in their 80s, the women, the response we're hearing is, I played 18 holes and I'm not as tired as I used to be. This is really nice. And because they're playing less than 4,000 yards or less than 4,500 yards. I'm also hearing things like, I made my first par, been playing the game 15 years, made my first par because they're playing the right tees. And you know what? We played 18 holes in 4 hours today because we're playing up on these forward tees. So time is clearly an important part in almost every one of our lives. And the millennials even more so. I heard somebody say that we're living our lives in 2-hour increments these days. And maybe that's why youth soccer is so popular, because you can take your kid to play soccer in 2 hours and be out of there, right? So we think that the 12-hole concept and the flexibility within the routing really will address the lifestyle changes that we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. If you want to play traditional golf, we will have a line on the scorecard that will have the 12 holes and then 6 alternate tees that you can go back and play 6 other holes from different tees. So if you want to post an 18-hole score, you'll be able to do that. And for those of you that keep a handicap and are concerned about the USGA and will they recognize my handicap and can I post a 12-hole score? Absolutely. They will allow you to do that. So I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
No,
did I over-answer it?
Perfect. And I could have included it as part of that first question, but knowing you, I knew you'd cover it, which is good.
Okay.
No, that's a compliment. But talk about, just kind of walk the people through, if you would, the layout, how this all came about, what we're doing, and even you might say a little bit more about, the water retention,
Sure.
and why we had to do it, and why it was difficult, and
Yeah.
blah, Please.
The easy part of this project was routing the 12 holes. The incredibly difficult part of this project has been doing the grading to accommodate the stormwater storage that is required by the county and the engineers. So your golf course right now goes all the way through this area and then comes back here. This is where the new development is going to be. So to get these homes out of the floodplain, we have to take that water and accommodate it somewhere else. So it's all going to happen back here on this area we call the South Basin. So it's the area over the ridge. And back here alone, we have to store 300 acre feet. So let me see if I can put that in perspective. An acre is roughly 200 foot square. So what's a football field? Maybe 3 acres long and an acre wide. So 3 acre, let's say this football field's 3 acres, we got to go 100 feet up. That's like 10 stories. That's the volume of water we have to store back here in the worst case scenario. And we've just achieved that. So to do that, we actually took advantage of some of the areas that I think are better than what was there before. We've got a couple of holes here pushing up on the hillside, and this par 3, the 7th hole, I think is going to be the most photographed hole. It's the hole where you're going to stand on the green and just linger, because we're up quite high, and you'll be looking out over the whole South Basin into the west towards the ocean, and it should be absolutely spectacular. We've got the adjacent tee, because who doesn't love a big downhill tee shot? I mean, we all love that, right? So had to put the tees right next to it. We got a big downhill par 4 that you get to play. And then we come back towards the mountains with the next par 4, a little bit shorter, about 350 yards from the back tee. And it's one of the things that I always like is when you've got a mountain backdrop and you hit your drive and you just watch the ball sail against the mountains. And I mean, it's one of those things that remind me why I like playing golf. And we'll have that on a couple of holes here. So that was some of the technical challenges. We've got the Conejo Creek runs along this edge right here. Some of you know there's a lake back there. It's kind of grown over right now, but that's a source of irrigation water. This entire area is going to be mitigation area. We could not get into there with the golf. I kind of wish we could have, but anymore, golf design these days is a matter of trade-offs and value judgments and working with 50 other consultants who all have their own needs and requirements. So the 6 holes that are on this side of the ridge will be something you're more familiar with, what American architects call parkland golf. Wide areas of turf, lots of trees, very much like you're in a park, not link style or anything like that. As we get over into the South Basin, we will have wide fairways and rough areas, but then there will be these mitigation areas that will be in between many of the fairways. So it'll be a little bit more of a natural look between some of those fairways.
Excuse me, what do you mean mitigation?
they're asking us to create areas where they can do native plantings and revegetate more native species in lieu of some of the areas that are being lost. So it's a trade-off. We're losing it in some areas and we're recreating it in other areas.
What about the problem of the flood basin as we know it now?
The problem of what?
The flooding that we get now, even off the Gulf onto Ridge, the adjoining street that along the golf course.
Yeah, I'm not the engineer. Pace Engineering is handling that, so I don't know if I can speak expertly to that question for you.
That's just a concern.
Yeah, no, and it should
And
be.
it's a valid concern.
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is that they've asked us to store that volume of water in the golf course, and we've done it.
Okay.
Well, and it's creating something that, you know, the obvious question is, well, goodness gracious, you know, when it rains, the golf course is going to flood, you know, won't it be closed? Well, I need to give you a news flash. The golf course is in a floodplain.
Yeah.
It's always been in a floodplain. It's always flooded. Welcome to the real world. Now, here's the other thing. When was FEMA created? First of all, FEMA was not in existence when they built this golf course in the first place. So, yes, the golf course at high times of flooding will flood. Any golf course operator that gets a golf course that's in a floodplain plans for that, budgets for that, thinks that through, knows the number of days or projects the number of days your golf course is going to be impacted by flooding. The key is not that it floods, the key is how fast it vacates and gets off. We've been told, and based on the plans and the hydrology, that it won't be on the fairways any more than 48 hours at any given time. That's acceptable. Good news is tees and greens are above, you know, the flood problem. They won't be underwater under, you know, bad storm conditions. That's what we've been told. But that's as much as I know, less than what he knows, that it was designed by arguably the best in the business, best in the world, Pace Engineering out of Costa Mesa, California. So
There was a question over here, I thought?
this lady here.
Yes.
Okay. I have to say that I really have a problem with the whole way of moving water through the development. I mean, basically what that's going to do is put us all in being the low spot. And I can tell you from a personal experience that what happens when you say that those fairways are going to drain in 48 hours, well, guess where that water goes? Underneath my house. It does. So, you know, we're creating a whole nother scenario, and I don't know geologically how you're going to get that water from where it naturally flows to the backside. It's just not a natural flow at all.
One of the next meetings, and it's
Okay.
the reason we tried to set this way, we have the group of specialists in different areas, and, you know, to try to do it, to try to have the residential and the golf and the engineering and the, you know, then people don't get their answers. And what we really want to start doing is give you as much answers as we can. One of the next meetings will be with Pace. And they can explain the process with you. We were, you know, again, we were asked to design something based on the, you know, the hydrology requirements they gave us, and we've done that. They have answered those questions. They have done this many times around the country successfully, but please be at that meeting, and you'll get the answer, as they say, from the horse's mouth.
I have a simple question. Now, you're presenting a 12 hole, basically.
Right.
6 on the backside, 3 here, and 3 on the other side.
Yeah.
How's the configuration going to work?
Okay, that's a good question. How is the configuration going to work? The way
Hopefully real well.
there's actually some flexibility to it, but we think the primary routing is going to be leaving the clubhouse and going across the street and playing 1, 2, and 3, coming back across the street. The 4th hole is going to be right outside the clubhouse. It's actually a par 3 playing towards the clubhouse. 5's going this way, then up over the ridge, and then 6 holes on the back, and then back over the ridge and back over the street, and then 12 will finish. Actually, the 12th green is a little ways away from the clubhouse, but because of the spacing, that we had to have a safety setback so that we didn't bomb the street and the clubhouse. It's actually a really cool par 4 around a lake, kind of a shortish par 4, what we would call a drive and a pitch hole. And then, so 12 finishes up right here, and then it's just right back into the clubhouse. So, and then like Gary said earlier, the routing has been reversed so that most of us are right-handed, most of us slice. The slices are going inboard and not out towards the homes.
Okay? Sir?
Yes,
Oh.
Oh, you need a mic. Carly's coming.
I'll try to talk loud.
She's right behind you.
Sorry.
This seems pretty complicated from the standpoint if you're going to have someone who wants to come out and golf 3. Are you going to have this managed by computers to know where every...
Yeah.
So that if I want to golf 12, I'm sitting there waiting for someone who stepped in golf 3.
Yeah.
How's that going to happen? No. And then I assume you're going to computerize it so that you know the flow.
Oh, yeah.
Will that allow me to register with my app on my phone to get a tee time? And
have you been talking to some people? Because that's a perfect segue, I think.
No,
I'll let Gary address it. Then I've got my thoughts on it.
What was envisioned when we talked about 3 holes, 6 holes, 9 holes? Basically, right now it's a 12-hole golf course. But for example, if you have a ladies group, or if you have a men's club group, let's just say the ladies want to play 3 holes and then go have a luncheon. It's perfect for that. The ladies want to play 6 holes and go have a luncheon. That's perfect for that. And we've tried to work as much variance as you can to give people as many options as you can. But there will not be I don't envision an organized 3-hole fee, 6-hole fee, 9-hole fee, 12-hole fee. You're asking for a logistical nightmare that's not been worked out yet. But the thinking was if we could accommodate the groups, the people from the community here, and they only have time to play a few holes, you can work that out. And it lays out nicely for that. And you can almost, when you have something like this with this many homes in this community, you can almost treat this as a semi-pseudo private club or a semi-private deal to where you can make accommodations for the folks that live here. That's the genesis of that.
If I can just add to this, Gary, for a second. It's on 18-hole golf courses now, a lot of times, let's say you'll have somebody go off at 10 o'clock, and then maybe not somebody doesn't go off until 10:30 on a Wednesday or something, so there's a gap there. And if somebody wants to play 9 holes, the golf shop will kind of fit them into that gap. But I was just talking to somebody today, and I think this is maybe where we're going to go, because we've been talking a lot about millennials and getting them into golf and how they view golf a little bit differently. I think the smart operator in the future is going to have to be able to do that. It's going to have to give somebody a bag tag with an RFID chip in it or something like that, that every time they pass the flag stick, they've logged another golf hole, and then you pay by the hole or something like that, or it comes right out of your debit card. Just kind of the way like when you order Uber or something, right? It's on your phone, and you pay, your credit card's in there, and it pays for it. So I think that potential exists. It may be 5 or 10 years away, but I definitely think that exists. But I think in traditional terms, we were thinking that people who wanted to play 3 holes or 6 holes were people that were, they're going to sneak out of work at 3 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock and come on out and play a few holes or something like that. I don't imagine somebody walking into the golf shop at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning saying, I just want to play 3 holes. Now, maybe Gary can find a way to make that happen, but I think you're going to see more of the traditional players in those prime times. Where would you like to go, Gary?
The lady in the back was first.
Yes, ma'am.
A quick question. You said that from the golf clubhouse to 1,
Yes.
which is over here, they're going to be going down Ador Lane?
No.
How are they going to get there from the clubhouse?
Here's the clubhouse now,
Right.
right there.
Yeah, you just like along the.
But I thought 1's going to be way at the other end. 10 is now. I thought that was going to be 1.
It is.
But we're reversing the direction of that hole. So the tees are by the road and the green is at the far end.
Yeah, we put all the slices are on the interior now. So it's playing in the reverse direction.
I've got a different question.
Okay. What would you like?
There's houses going in.
Yes.
Are the houses going in prior to the development of the golf course, or is the golf course being developed before the houses, or which? There's a microphone for you. I think you heard my question. There's houses going in as
yeah.
well as the golf course, correct?
What's the
development
timing?
Excuse me. The development for both will be concurrent as they do the grading. For example, a lot of the grading is going to come from over here, and the rough grading for the golf course over here will be done as they finish the excavation on this side, so it's almost a concurrent.
What happens to the community and all the traffic while this is going on? Because we've got problems now.
That's being studied right now in the EIR.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We had some others back here, I think,
That gentleman there, yeah.
in the blue jacket.
I have a question in regards to the 12 hole. I think that concerns a lot of people is the 12 hole.
Sure.
And our property values are going to be affected if something goes wrong with that golf course.
Mhm.
And you mentioned there's only about 20 to 25 12 holes in the entire country at this time. Can we say that this 12-hole concept is really more of an experiment in stage at this point, that we haven't really crossed over into a full steam ahead, let's go make some money stage?
I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. Golf, if you study golf history, golf has always been in an evolution. Always. For example, I'm sure you've all heard of St. Andrews Golf Club in Scotland. Guess how many holes it started out with? 12. So the key to something, and we didn't address this earlier today, but yeah, golf's having a tough time right now. But the truth is that the clubs and the courses that are staying market driven, that are paying attention to what their markets are saying and what the people are telling them, they're actually doing okay. And the one thing they taught me in business school many years ago was to make it easy for people to give you money. So if you figure out what people want and try to figure out how to give it to them, understanding the site restrictions and limitations that you have, and knowing that you don't have the money and have no way to recreate 18 holes on this site.
Well, I appreciate that. The designer almost said he was about ready to say yes. And it was an experiment.
No, actually, I was actually going to give you a history lesson, because not only was St. Andrews anywhere from 12 to 22 holes at one point, but the very first British Opens, as we call it here, and they only refer to it as the Open Championship over there, was played at Prestwick on 12 holes. 18 holes wasn't standardized till 200 or 300 years after the game was founded. And by the way, if you've all heard that story about 18 holes because there's 18 shots of whiskey in a bottle, urban legend, absolute urban legend.
I'll keep trying to stop doing that.
Okay?
I was just going to add, I guess one way of thinking about this is that we could, instead of doing 12-hole, we could do a 9-hole regulation length golf course. And the 12 holes is clearly more desirable than that. And 9-hole courses are prevalent. There's, I think, about a quarter of the inventory of golf courses across the country are 9-hole courses. So they can be very successful with a practice range and a nice clubhouse facility. So I think the way to look at this in terms of the downside is like, okay, the downside would be this would be a 9-hole course. That'd be the worst case. And I think the 12-hole is substantially superior to that.
Let me add something to this too, because there's been a lot of attention to 12 holes because it's non-traditional. But if you look at all the surveys out there of golfers, as what do golfers see, what do they rate highest when it comes to satisfaction? When they come off the golf course, you ask them, what were you happiest about? Number one thing is conditioning. So whether you have 9 holes, 12 holes, or 17 holes, if the golf course is in great condition, no pressure there, Rich, it's going to be, people are going to be happy about it, and it'll be successful. And so I really don't think the number of holes is going to make a big impact on the market. I think it's going to be conditioning and service and fun. Did we have fun on the golf course?
Well, and you talk about your home values. What your home value is going to do with the golf course in this condition may be closed, or having a 12-hole golf course that's in good condition, brand new infrastructure, brand new clubhouse, everything else you don't have now. The truth is, the termites stop holding hands in the clubhouse, it's going to fall down. So what's that doing to your home values now? And the truth is, not doing anything is not an answer. I mean, this golf course, whether you want to hear this or not, believe this or not, hearing this story about the irrigation system yesterday, this golf course is going to close one way or the other, sooner versus later. And the only question is, will it reopen? Now, I'm sorry, but that's the facts. And you've had people smarter than me tell you that. And you can either listen to that or not listen to that. That's not a scare tactic. That's just the honest truth. We were given a certain amount of land to do something. And I can tell you this architect has done a magnificent job getting these holes in here. But let's try to get Brother Rich in here, and we can continue this discussion. But Rich, how fortuitous this was a couple of years ago when we were having a Christmas party, and this guy walked up to me in a cowboy hat and looked at me, and I looked up and said, goodness gracious, and there was my good friend, Brother Rich Wagner, and he happens to live here. And this guy is a golf course superintendent, I mean, of impeccable credentials, and he's working with us to pull this off. So he's on the panel, he's part of the golf subcommittee, he's been incredibly instrumental, very helpful. But if I can just ask you a couple questions, and we can tie this up. But, you know, what do you think of the current condition of the golf course? You play it every Saturday? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for being late.
There you go.
Okay, hear me? I want to apologize to you all for being late. I had a cardiologist appointment this afternoon, and you don't cancel those or try to postpone them because they get all pissed off at you for not showing up. So that's the reason I'm late. And by the way, I'm in great shape. No worries. Thank you.
You have a heart?
I have a heart.
All right.
And I've got a pacemaker, so I've got a heart that works forever. So the condition of the golf course, I am a resident here. I live in the townhomes. I've been here. We just downsized about 3 years ago from Montelena Track up by Vaughn's, downsized into Camarillo Springs because we like the community. I'm a golfer. My wife wants to be, but she doesn't have time to do it. With a 12 hole, possibly she will. The condition of the golf course right now is horrible, with a capital H. If you've been on the golf course, you know what I'm talking about. There's open holes, mainline breaks. The tees are horrendous. The drainage does not work where there is drainage. The greens are pretty good, but stepping aside from the greens, the fairways, the tees, the roughs are all horrible. Irrigation system is toast. They cannot run the irrigation system except during the daytime because they can't let it run at night because it will just flood out the whole area. Many of the bunkers, well, they're supposed to be hazards, but they're beyond being hazards. They're just a disaster. Better recently with the new operator that's here temporarily. They've been trying to maintain the bunkers a little bit better, but they're terrible. Half the bunker rakes in the bunkers were donated by North Ranch Country Club when I was the director of agronomy there. Many of the directional logs, the 4x4 logs, were also donated by me to Dan Warren, who's your superintendent, who does an amazing job with Zero. It's not his fault, it's the former owner's fault. The former owner also destroyed or almost destroyed Sterling Hills, which I built, which I'm very upset about. So the golf course is horrible. It doesn't have a good reputation. When I tell people I play golf at Camarillo Springs every Saturday, they question why. And why? Because I play golf with a buddy of mine. We chat while we play golf. Golf is just something to do while we talk. And we talk about everything, except for politics and religion.
Good. Thank you, Bud. What do you think of the current plan, and just how do you think it can be sustainable for the long haul?
Well, first of all, you're starting with a new product. If we've had a car since this golf course was built in the early 70s, you probably don't have that car anymore. Or if you do, it's been rebuilt several times. This golf course has not been rebuilt ever. They've had a new irrigation system put in, I think, about 25 years ago. Not a new system, but an upgrade to irrigation heads. Lost my train of thought there, sorry. One of the big problems with the product that's here now is it's worn out, it's done. With the new product, new irrigation, new drainage, new turf, new technology, equipment, my gosh, they need equipment. The equipment here, if you've ever been down to the maintenance yard, I suggest you don't go because it's dangerous down there. So an upgraded product will bring more people. I mean, that's just the way it is. You're gonna be driving a 2020, 2022 product instead of a 1972 product.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Any comments or questions for Rich? Sir. Sure.
Yeah, I live on the 8th hole, and I play sufficient golf here, and I wanted to touch on the 55 and older. A lot of players here are well below 55 years old, so that's going to contribute to the new golf course.
Believe that. Counting on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Just touch on briefly your idea of a golf experience rather than being a traditional 18 holes. That this is a kind of a new approach to the marketplace. You talked about being sensitive to what the market wants, and so maybe just a short snippet of your vision for that.
Well, what we tried to do here, when you look at what they're calling an alternative golf facility, that's the best way I can say it. And I don't like that word because it sounds like a downgrade or something. But the truth is, this is something other than an 18-hole golf course. So what we wanted to do was to create almost like a golf center, golf learning center, to where you could utilize the driving range, the chipping and the pitching greens, and then make the food and beverage, more of a social center for the community like it used to be. I mean, we even talked about maybe doing a home delivery of food, for the community. There's nothing out here. If we could figure out how to, legally bring you booze to your house, that'd be another profit center. But I don't think you can do that. I don't think you get away with that. But the whole idea was to create this, this overall golfing experience to where golf was just a part of the presentation. So you had the teaching, you had the learning, you had you could get people fit for the right golf clubs. They could have a lunch, they could have a dinner, they could have a Sunday brunch, all tied into this whole community cocooning type, feeling, to where when you walked away from it, golf was not lost in the shuffle, but it was just one more of the things that they threw at you. My daddy, he's gone, but years ago he loved company. He loved folks to come over, and he was from Texas, so he could talk to you. But he'd say, "Y'all come see me, and I'll treat you so many ways you'll have to like 4 or 5 of them." And the truth is, if you have an operation that deals with people in that manner, that you're looking after what their needs are, what their wants are, if you really stay market driven, you can create that overall sense of value, if you will, that creates that experience, that satisfies, well, I don't play golf. Well, okay, do you eat? Do you drink? Do you like good music? There's a way to enjoy the country club experience, even though it's a public golf course. And that's what we tried to envision here. Okay. Last question. The gentleman behind you, he didn't get a chance, so.
I have several, actually. From when you start moving soil, I'm going to assume the golf course is going to be shut down.
Oh, sure.
For a number of months. So I'll back up. When you say this golf course has, and I don't play golf, but I respect the guys that have bought homes here and want to play golf and chase a little white ball around grass.
You got to try it.
But it's outlived its maintenance life.
Yep.
A maintenance life of 40 years? Is that what you anticipate? Is that what's...
That's longer than what normally is.
25?
You're closer there.
Okay,
20.
so 25 years is what this should have lived out to, and it's well with it's got a pacemaker on it right now, sorry.
Good enough.
And so at some point you're going to change out the pumps, the irrigation system, everything. Will that be done when the soil when it's shut down, will that be done when the soil's moved from your area that you have to take soil from and put water to?
It'll all be done in that process, yes.
Start to finish, realistically, not optimistically, what time frame are you talking about?
18 months.
18 months, so 2 years. I'm a realist.
Well, it might be sooner, so you asked me
Okay.
realistically, I gave you a realistic number.
Okay,
Now,
so
if you
18
get
months.
40 days of floods, I mean, that's
I
certainly going to
gotcha, I
affect
gotcha.
things, but
Yeah.
18 months on 12 holes,
I actually built Sherwood Country Club, and we opened that golf course 18 months after the first scoop of dirt was moved.
What was
And,
there before that?
It looks totally different now. They moved mountains there, literally mountains.
No
Hundreds
homes
of,
around it?
there are homes above it.
No, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with Sherwood. I
Oh.
don't play golf. So were there homes around it beforehand? You got people here that live here, and they're going to put up with this for 18 months.
There were homes, old homes.
Okay.
We called them the 12 disciples, and they were adjacent to the property.
12 homeowners.
12 homeowners, yes,
Okay.
yes.
That had more money.
But the time frame for moving dirt on this site is a lot less than Sherwood. Sherwood was, and we moved rock, we moved trees, we moved hundreds of thousands of yards of dirt. We put in streets and infrastructure, gas lines, water lines. I mean, and this all happened in 18 months. Now, it also helps that the owner, Mr. Murdoch, had a lot of money.
And wanted it to happen.
no,
But-
actually made it happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important, though, to understand that you're not going to have 18 months of 630 scrapers going back and forth from one side of the side of the other. The 18 months includes all of the construction processes and the turf development. So the grading is all going to happen at the front end of this. And that could be, and I'm just guessing based on prior experience, 3 to 6 months. And then the big heavy equipment's going to go away. And on the golf course side, you're going to see smaller equipment. You'll see D5 dozers, tractors, workmen, that kind of thing. And then at some point, as that work starts to get done, you'll see smaller and smaller equipment. It'll be more of a maintenance operation, because once you plant the grass, you've got to have 3 to 4 months to grow the grass. So at that point, it'll be hoses and gators and Cushman and stuff like that running around. So I just didn't want anybody to get the idea that there's going to be 18 months of these big yellow, heavy equipment guys running around.
Okay, thank you very much to Gary and his team. And Greg and the golf subcommittee. So these guys will be around. They've got another performance, quote unquote, or an opportunity to share at 6 o'clock. So just be mindful. They want a little bit of a break, but if you have some questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you. Thanks for coming.